Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about 7.5 and it's all about the rational zero theorem. So up until now you've learned about your synthetic division, your synthetic substitution, long division, and what we're going to do is we're still going to use synthetic division, so hopefully you're comfortable with that. But now we're going to not be given a factor, and you're going to have to use the rational zero theorem to find the factor. So right here on this first page, I've got an example that we're going to work through, and I've listed basically the 3 steps that you need to go through in order to find the zeros. Remember, zeros mean where it hits the x-axis, so I'll write that over here. A zero is where it hits the x-axis. And what we're going to do first is we are going to find all the factors of the constant. Okay, so that's going to be your whole number at the end, or whatever fraction. It's usually going to be a whole number. So in this case, for step 1, all our factors of 4 are going to be 1, 2, and 4. So these are all things that can multiply to get 4. 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. Then we're going to list all the factors of the leading coefficient. Okay, so I just circled my constant. My leading coefficient is 3. So what are my factors of 3? They're going to be 1 and 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to divide, this is the last step, we're going to divide the factors from number 1 by all the factors from number 2. So and also I put underneath here, they all have to have a plus or minus. So in front of every single number, you're going to put plus or minus. So what we're going to do is take the first one divided by 1. So plus or minus 1 divided by 1. And then we're going to do plus or minus the 1 divided by the 3. 1 divided by 3. And then we're going to do plus or minus, I'm going to move on to the next one, 2 divided by 1. Then plus or minus 2 divided by 3. Okay, and then I'm going to do the 4. So 4 divided by 1, so plus or minus 4 divided by 1, and then plus or minus 4 divided by 3. And of course, if any of these are just over 1s, you can just rewrite it as a whole number. So this reduces to plus or minus 1, plus or minus 1/3, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 2/3, plus or minus 4, and then plus or minus 4/3. And what this means is that there's a potential from one of these numbers, either positive 1, negative 1, positive 2, negative 2, positive 2/3, negative 2/3, that one of those numbers or multiple of those numbers is where this graph is going to hit the x-axis. Now what's also important to remember and to note is that whatever your degree is, okay, so this is my degree of 4, is going to tell you how many answers you're going to have. So the degree equals the number of zeros that you have to have. Now, sometimes you might have a repeated 0. Maybe it somehow hits at 1 twice. And that's okay. It just, as long as you've got a total of whatever the degree is. So now let's take a look at an example. I want you guys to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try to find the possible zeros. So remember, you're going to find the step 1 is find the factors of the constant. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2 is to find the factors of the leading coefficient. Okay, and then step 3 is to write them as fractions. So pause the video, try that out. Okay, so this should have been your final results for your 2 factors. So factors of 56, I've got them listed here from 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 14, 28, and 56. And then my only factor of the number in front of my highest degree, which is just a 1, is just 1. So this one works out really nicely that when you divide all the green by the blue, so all the constants by the leading coefficient, you're just going to get the numbers again. There's not going to be any fractions like the last example. So you would put plus or minus, and then you would list all those numbers. So 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 14, 28, and 56. Because remember, I could take all of these, that 1 divided by 1, 2 divided by 1, 4 divided by 1, and so on. And they'd all have plus or minuses in front of them. Okay, so these are your potential zeros. Now, not all of them will be your answers. And in this case, because the degree is 3, that means 3 zeros are going to be in your answer. So now what we're going to do is go one step further, and we're going to use this to actually factor and solve. So here's our first example. It says you have x to the fourth plus 10x cubed plus 33x squared plus 38x plus 8. Big one. Okay, and it says find all the zeros. Well, I don't tell you a zero, so you have to list all the possible ones, and then it's kind of just a guess and check game. So what we're going to do is find the factors of 8. So 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. Okay, and then the factors of our 1. So that was step 1. Okay, factors of 1 are just 1. So if I divide 1 by 1, 2 by 1, 4 by 1, and 8 by 1, my possible factors, or possible zeros, sorry, are plus or minus 1, 2, 4, and 8. Alright, so 1 or negative 1, 2 or negative 2, 4 or negative 4, or 8 or negative 8. And now this is the part that's new. What we're going to do is use synthetic division, okay, and we are going to guess and check which ones we think our answer might have. So remember synthetic division, we're going to write all of our coefficients, so 1, 10, 33, 38, and 8. And the goal is to get this equation down to something that we can factor. So right now we have a fourth degree, and we really only are comfortable factoring a second degree. So we're going to have to do synthetic division twice. All right, well now here's our possible zeros, so I'm just going to pick one of these numbers and try it out. So maybe we try positive 1. Okay. Well, the goal is that when we finish this, we get a 0 at the end. So I'm going to bring down my 1. I get 1 times 1 is 1. This gets me 11. 33 plus 11 is 44. 44 plus 38. That's going to get us 82. And notice that this is going to be huge. Okay, so this is going to get us 90. Well, is this 0? No. So this means that this one doesn't work. Okay, so we're going to have to start over. And like I said, it's going to be guess and check. You sometimes might get a lucky guess. Sometimes you might have to try a couple. So now let's say we try negative 2. So I bring down my 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. This gets me 8. Negative 2 times 8 is negative 16. 33 minus 16 is 17. 17 times negative 2 is going to get me negative 34. I get 4, and then negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, which gets me 0. So this is good. Okay, so usually in synthetic division, we would stop there and we'd write our equation. But when we do that, remember this goes down a degree, this would get us something that's x cubed, and we don't want that. So we need to go one more time so that we can get something that's x squared. So I'm going to do the synthetic division one more time. So I'm just going to continue it from here. You could redraw a whole separate box. It's whatever you feel like. So now I'm going to be dealing with these numbers, and I'm going to be ignoring the 0 at the end. So I'm going to maybe guess negative 4 this time, just trying some different numbers. So I'm going to bring down the 1. Negative 4 times 1 gets us negative 4. 8 minus 4 is 4. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. We get 1. Okay, then that gets us negative 4, which gets us 0 again. So we've got a 0. Now it's down to something that's x squared, because we started with the fourth. This gets us the third. The last one gets us the squared. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my equation so that I can factor it. So I had this negative 2 here. If I write it as an equation, it would be x plus 2, because remember it changes signs. My negative 4 I write as x plus 4. Okay, so this is 2 of my x's, so I have 2 left. So I'm going to have 1x squared plus 4x and then plus 1. Remember, we don't do anything with the zeros because they're a remainder. So now this is something that I can factor. Well, the first 2 are already factored, and we need to factor this one further. Well, you can't factor it by hand. Okay, this 1 doesn't have any other factors to get you 4, so this is where we're going to have to use quadratic formula. And if you really aren't comfortable with factoring something squared, use quadratic formula every time, and it should work for you. So I'm going to do opposite of b, so negative 4, plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4a and c, and then all over 2 times a. Okay, so a was 1, b was 4, c was 1 from this equation I underlined. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start simplifying. So I get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 12 all over 2. And when I reduce that farther, I get negative 4 plus or minus 2 root 3 over 2. And I can cancel 2's from here. So I'm left with -2 plus or minus root 3. So my final zeros for this equation are -2 plus or minus root 3. So this is two of my answers because we've got a plus and a minus. And then I have my other 0 was -2, and my other 0 was -4. Those are the two that worked in the synthetic division. So there are my 4 answers. All right, so it's kind of a long problem, especially when you've got a higher degree, but if you can find the ones that work evenly into your synthetic division, then you should be good to go. All right, I want you guys to try this next one on your own. Check your answers when you're done, and if you have any questions about the process, please ask before you go on to your practice problems. So this one here, you've got f of x is equal to 2x to the 4th plus 5x cubed minus 18x squared minus 19x plus 42. Okay, and my hint to you is that at the end you will probably have to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so after you've gotten it down to something squared, you're going to use that quadratic formula. So press the pause button, try it out on your own, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so I didn't show the work for this one, but you should have found that -2 and 3/2, or same as 1.5, both worked for the synthetic division. And then when you got it down to your second synthetic division problem, you had to write your equations, kind of like we did in the last example, and the equation that you're left with is not factorable, so you had to use quadratic formula. And that very last one right here is what we get from the quadratic formula if you reduced it all the way. So please don't write things as decimals unless they ask you to. Leave square roots in the answer and reduce it as much as possible. If you did not get either of these any of these answers, or just in general you have a question, please come ask me on this one before you continue on to your practice problems. But that's it for this section. Hopefully the synthetic division you're comfortable with. Finding zeros is pretty easy. It just might be that last factoring step that you might be having trouble with, and I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with it. So thanks for listening.